There's a common belief that cheating is always obvious. Late replies, strange behavior, emotional distance. But the truth is far more unsettling. The most dangerous kind of betrayal is the one you never see coming. Because when some women cheat, they don't act suspicious, they act perfect. And that's where the illusion begins. Trick number one, emotional overcompensation. Instead of pulling away, she leans in. Suddenly, she's more affectionate, more attentive, more loving than ever before. You start thinking, wow, our relationship is getting better. But in reality, it's not connection, it's compensation. Psychologically, guilt often leads people to overcorrect behavior, showing more love to hide the truth underneath. Worth is so while you feel reassured, she's carefully lowering your suspicion. Trick number two, the safe image shield. She builds an identity that feels untouchable, loyal, honest against cheating. That your worth is, she might even talk negatively about people who cheat, post about loyalty, act like she would never do such a thing. And that's exactly the point. Because the stronger her good image, the less likely you are to question her about hiding actions. It's about controlling perception. Trick number three, strategic normalcy. She doesn't act different. She acts consistent. No sudden changes. Obvious red flags. Because most people don't get caught for cheating itself, they get caught for behavioral shifts. So she maintains routines, same texting patterns, same habits, same tone. Everything feels normal, even when it's not. Trick number four, to controlled communication. Her phone becomes her most powerful tool. Messages are timed, notifications are managed, details are carefully filtered. She may delay replies just enough to seem natural, but never enough to raise suspicion. And if something feels off, there's always a quick explanation ready. Busy with friends. Phone died. Simple, believable, effective. Trick number five, the friend cover. There's always someone who seems harmless, a coworker, a longtime friend, someone you are told not to worry about. And that's intentional, because when suspicion appears, it's already been neutralized. He's just a friend. Over time, you stop questioning it. And that's when the boundary quietly disappears. Is trick number six, emotional justification. This is the most powerful trick of all. Before the cheating even begins, she convinces herself it's okay. Maybe she feels unappreciated, ignored, disconnected, and slowly the narrative shifts. I deserve better. I'm not really doing anything wrong. This just happened. Psychology calls this rationalization, a way to reduce guilt by rewriting the story in your mind. Once that mental barrier is gone, everything else becomes easier. Final thought. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Cheating isn't always chaotic. It's often calculated. It's not about being careless. It's about being convincing. And the most convincing illusion is the one that feels real. Because in the end, you don't get fooled by lies. You get fooled by consistency, comfort, and the version of someone you want to believe. There's something most people never realize about cheating. It's not always loud. It's not always obvious. It definitely doesn't always look like betrayal. Sometimes it looks like love. That's what makes it dangerous. Because the truth is, the people who get caught are usually the careless ones. But the ones who don't, they understand psychology, they understand timing, emotion, perception, and once you understand these six subtle tricks, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Trick number one, emotional overcompensation. You'd expect someone who's cheating to pull away, right? Become distant, cold, unavailable. But sometimes the exact opposite happens. She becomes more affectionate, more attentive, more present than ever before. She texts you first. She compliments you more. She suddenly seems like the perfect partner, and that's exactly why it works, because your brain relaxes. You think there's no way something is wrong, things feel better than ever, but what you're actually experiencing is compensation. Is psychologically, when someone feels guilt, they often try to balance it out by overgiving in another area. So while you're feeling loved, she's balancing the weight of something you don't see. Trick number two is the perfect image. She builds a version of herself that feels impossible to question, loyal, honest, against cheating. She might even judge others who cheat, talk about how much she values trust, post things about loyalty and respect. And slowly you stop questioning her because in your mind, she's not that type of person. But that's the trick. It's not about what she does, it's about what you believe she would never do. And once that belief is locked in, suspicion disappears. Trick number 3, controlled normalcy. Most people think cheating gets exposed because of the act itself. It doesn't, it gets exposed through change. So, the smartest move, don't change anything. Same routines, same habits, same tone, same energy. She keeps everything consistent. No sudden distance, no unusual behavior. Because the human brain looks for patterns, and as long as the pattern stays the same, you assume everything is fine, even when it's not. Trick number 4, communication control. Her phone becomes more than just a device, it becomes a strategy. Messages are timed carefully, replays are delayed just enough to feel natural, but never suspicious. Notifications are managed, conversations are hidden in plain sight. Is if something ever feels slightly off, there's always a simple explanation ready. I was busy. I didn't see it. My phone died. And because the excuse is small, you don't question it deeply. That's the power of simplicity. The more normal something sounds, the less you investigate it. Trick number 5, the harmless connection. There's always someone in the background, someone you've heard about before, a coworker, a friend, is someone who seems completely safe, and that's intentional because when a name feels familiar, it feels non-threatening. She might mention him casually, bring him up in conversation, make his presence feel normal. So if anything ever crosses your mind, you immediately dismiss it. He's just a friend. And over time, that label becomes a shield strong enough to hide what's really happening. Trick number 6, emotional justification. This is where everything truly begins, because before any action happens, there's a story being created in her mind, a story that makes it okay. Maybe she feels ignored. Maybe she feels unappreciated. Maybe she feels like something is missing. And instead of addressing it directly, the mind starts to shift. I deserve more. I'm not being treated right. This just happened. I didn't plan it. And slowly the guilt fades. Because the brain is incredibly good at protecting itself, it rewrites reality in a way that feels justified. And once someone believes their own story, they don't feel like the bad person anymore. They feel like the victim. Now, here's the part that most people don't want to hear. None of these tricks are loud. None of them are dramatic. That's why they work. Because you're not looking for something subtle. You're looking for something obvious, something clear, something undeniable. But real deception doesn't work like that. It works quietly. It hides in consistency, in comfort, in the version of someone you trust. And that's why it's so hard to see. But this isn't just about catching someone, it's about understanding human behavior. Because these patterns, they don't come from nowhere. They come from emotion, from unmet needs, internal conflict. And if you ignore those things, you miss the bigger picture. At the end of the day, the biggest mistake people make in relationships is believing that love alone is enough to keep things stable. It's not. Awareness matters. Communication matters. Emotional connection matters, because when those things fade, people don't always leave. Sometimes they stay and find something else in the shadows. So don't just listen to words, watch patterns. Don't just trust actions, understand behavior, because the truth is, you don't get fooled by someone acting different. You get fooled by someone who knows exactly how to act the same. And once you truly understand that, you stop seeing relationships through emotion alone. You start seeing them clearly, and clarity is something most people never have until it's too late. But here's where it gets even deeper, because what you've heard so far is that's only the surface. The real danger isn't just in the tricks, it's in how invisible they become over time. You see, when someone uses these patterns long enough, it stops feeling like a strategy. It becomes natural, automatic. And that's when it becomes almost impossible to detect. Let's go further. Because there are signs, but they don't look the way you expect. One of the biggest hidden signals is emotional unpredictability, not distance, not coldness, but inconsistency. Some days she feels incredibly close to you, laughing, smiling, fully present, and then suddenly there's a shift, not enough to start an argument, not enough to clearly point out, but just enough for you to feel it, a slight change in tone is small drop in energy, a moment where something feels off and you ignore it because it's not strong enough to confront, but your intuition notices. And that quiet feeling, that's where the truth usually lives. Another layer most people miss is selective attention. She listens to you, but not completely. She remembers things, but only certain details, because mentally her focus is divided. Part of her is present, and part of her is somewhere else, with someone else, with someone else, in another conversation, in another emotional space, and you can feel it, but you can't explain it. Now, here's something even more subtle. Future talk changes, not disappears. Changes, she still talks about plans, still mentions things you'll do together, but the depth is gone. It feels lighter, less certain, less emotionally invested, almost like she's speaking out of habit, not belief. And most people don't catch this because the words are still there, but the meaning behind them isn't. And then there's something even more powerful, energy protection. She becomes very careful with her emotional energy, not giving too much, not revealing too much, almost like she's managing how much of herself you can access. Because when someone is emotionally invested elsewhere, they have less to give. So instead of explaining that, they control exposure. They give you just enough to keep things stable, but never enough to raise deeper questions. Now, pause for a second because this part matters. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Because once you start seeing these patterns, you don't become paranoid, you become observant. Observation changes everything. You start noticing how people respond under pressure, how they communicate when things feel uncertain, how their actions align or don't align with their words. And most importantly, you stop ignoring your instincts. Because deep down, people often feel the truth long before they understand it. But here's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes, even when you see everything clearly, you don't want to accept it because acceptance means change. It means confronting reality. It means risking loss. And most people would rather stay comfortable in confusion than face clarity that hurts. That's why these situations last longer than they should, not because the signs aren't there, but because the mind resists what the heart isn't ready to handle. So what do you do with all this? You don't panic, you don't accuse, you don't react emotionally. You observe, you step back, you look at patterns over time, because truth isn't found in one moment, it's found in consistency. And if something feels off consistency, there's usually a reason. At the end of the day, this isn't due, is about relationships. It's about understanding people, understanding behavior, understanding the quiet signals that most people overlook. Because the strongest advantage you can have in life is not being the loudest, not being the most emotional, but being the most aware. And once you reach that level of awareness, something changes. You stop chasing certainty, you start recognizing truth. And that's when everything becomes clearer, not easier, but clearer. So if you've made it this far, you already see things differently. You already think differently. And that alone puts you ahead of most people. But this conversation doesn't end here because there's one final layer most people never talk about: the psychology of why people stay, even when they know something is wrong. So why do people stay, even when they feel something isn't right? This is where everything becomes real. Because it's easy to talk about behavior, patterns, psychology from the outside. But when you're inside it, it's completely different. The first reason is emotional attachment, not love in the way people imagine it, but attachment, the kind that builds over time. Memories, moments, shared experiences. Your brain doesn't just see the present, it sees everything you've been through together, and it whispers, "Don't lose this," even when something feels wrong. The second reason is hope. Hope is powerful, but it can also blind you. You start focusing on the good moments, the times things felt perfect, the version of the person you first met, and you tell yourself, it's just a phase. Things will go back to normal. She still cares, and maybe she does, but hope keeps you holding on even when reality is slowly changing. The third reason is fear of starting over, because walking away isn't just emotional, it's practical. It means change, new routines, new loneliness, new uncertainty. And for many people, that fear feels heavier than the doubt they're living with, so they stay. Not because they're happy, but because leaving feels harder. Now, here's something even deeper. Your identity becomes tied to the relationship. You don't just see it as something you have, you see it as part of who you are. So if it breaks, it doesn't just feel like losing someone, it feels like losing a part of yourself. And that's a pain most people try to avoid at all costs. But here's the truth: avoiding that pain doesn't protect you, it delays it. And often it makes it worse, because the longer you ignore what you feel, the more disconnected you become from yourself. You start questioning your instincts, doubting your perception, second guessing your own thoughts, and slowly you lose clarity, and clarity is everything. Without it, you stay stuck. Now let's shift perspective, because this isn't about blaming anyone. It's about understanding reality. People are complex, emotions are complex, and sometimes situations unfold in ways no one planned. But that doesn't change one thing: you still have a choice. You can ignore what you feel, or you can face it. You can stay in confusion, or you can seek clarity. You can hold on to comfort, or you can choose truth. And truth isn't always easy. In fact, most of the time it isn't, but it gives you something nothing else can: control. Because once you see things clearly, you stop reacting emotionally. You start making decisions intentionally. You stop making decisions intentionally. You start asking what and Pa are going to do about it. That shift changes everything. Now, here's the final piece most people never talk about. Closure doesn't come from the other person, it comes from you. You don't need every answer. You don't need every detail. You don't need full explanations. You need acceptance. Acceptance of what you feel, acceptance of what you see, acceptance of what you see, acceptance of what you know deep down. Because once you accept it, you free yourself, and that's when your power comes back. Not from controlling someone else, but from understanding yourself. So if you've stayed through this entire journey, there's a reason. You're not here by accident. Something in this resonated with you. Something made you think, something made you feel. And that's where awareness begins. But this isn't the end, because understanding behavior is just the first step. The next level is mastering attraction, connection, and emotional control, so you never find yourself in this position again. And that's exactly what we're going to break down next. Not just how people deceive, but how high-value individuals build relationships where respect, desire, and loyalty come naturally.